Well, I really appreciate your coming out tonight. I know things are getting very interesting at my house with gardening and everything, all the cleaning up. So coming out in the evening is a real pleasure to see you. So thanks for coming. Great. In 2004 is when I joined the Daughters of the Pioneers, and that's when I began being interested in the Pickett House. So this is the Pickett family home in Richmond, Virginia. This is when he was at the academy, and this is his first issue of stores. And so it was $12.11 worth of things. He got a pillow, he got a blanket, he had a slate, and that kind of thing, and I thought that was interesting. Then this is what he came to from Richmond, Virginia, where he was raised. And then this is the old fort that was built in burned in 1897. Then this is the Pickett House, and I've done it chronologically so you can just see a little bit what's happening. But this is the Pickett House about 1900. You can see there's a building there next to it, which is no longer there. And you can see that where the steps go up is not where we go up now. So few of those things have changed, but you can also see that the front porch doesn't have the windows it has now, but it does have the lean-to. There's a picture of the bridge after it's not used any longer, but that was the Pickett Bridge. And of course, he was trained as an engineer, so he was sent here to build a military road and bridges that were necessary. And then in 1920, the DAR put a plaque at the bridge. And you can see the plaque at the bridge right here. And then in 2009, I think, I called the regent, Sharon Sussdorf, and asked her about the plaque. And she said, oh, I don't know anything about it, I'll ask our members. So eventually, after about 4 months of both of us going to almost everybody in City Hall, we found out, yes, it is indeed called the Pickett Bridge. It wasn't the DuPont Street Bridge. So then we then went to the city and asked them if they would let us build a sign to say Pickett Bridge, so it would be an advertisement for the Pickett Bridge, for the Pickett House. And so they said, oh, we'll build that for you. So they built the sign, and now you see it when you go across the DuPont Bridge. You'll see that says Pickett Bridge on both sides. Well, the young man said he'd build the sign for us, and I said, well, would you put one at the other end of the bridge? Oh, sure. I said, oh, okay. Well, what about F Street? Would you put one on F Street both ways? Sure. I was on a roll. But you see, that's the goal. One of the goals of the Daughters of the Pioneers is to make signage that directs people to historic places. So these are the new signs, and this is the bridge sign, and then this is over on F Street. So now you have to look for those next time you're in the area, because we worked hard for that. And so therefore, we now have the signage, and and then this is the house in 1933. You can see the windows are glassed in there on the front porch, and you can see the same two windows that we still have, the same lean-to, and then you can see that the steps are no longer there, and the road went in front of it here. And Hattie was living there by herself in 1933 because Aunt Mary died. The Daughters of the Pioneers and the Daughters of the American Revolution again went together to work together, and they brought Admiral Byrd here to talk about his polar explorations. They charged at the door. He went up to the college at that time, and they charged at the door. I believe it was 15 cents. And then at the American Theater in the evening, he had another lecture. And with the proceeds, they paid off Hattie's debt, and she could then stay and live in the house till she died. So here's Hattie in 1936, and that's the only picture we found of her. It was in the newspaper, and so that's why it looks a little bit like a newspaper picture. And then I just thought I'd just list, in 1936, when the Daughters took over, they began renovation. They cleaned up the house, the city gravelled the street, the Kiwanis helped. The ladder to get to the 2 rooms upstairs was on a ladder on the wall. So then in 1936, they took the ladder off and made some stairs. And then a small kitchen was added at the back. And before that, Hattie didn't have a kitchen. So it's interesting that for all those years, 47 years, she cooked right outside, which is out the door, which is now a bathroom. She cooked in that area. And then in 1945, the daughters of the pioneers painted and used donated wallpaper and paint and furniture. And they continued then and to change it. In 1952, the 13th DPW president made repairs to the foundation, fixed up the yard, and had some volunteer help. So over the years, they've been trying to do things to it, but as you can see, it was few and far between. Plumbing repairs in 55 to 65, walls and ceilings painted, and then the great-grandson came and visited. And then in 1961, there was a dedication ceremony. And if you've been to the Pickett House, there's a sign, a wooden sign outside in the yard. And that's Jeff Cott built that for us. And he's the grandfather of our treasurer. And our treasurer is Joan Longstreth. And she's 90 years old, and this was her grandfather. He wrote Nooksack Tales and Trails. And then this, in 1971, the daughters had the building put on the National Register of Historic Places. It was the second building put on in Whatcom County, the first being this building, and now I believe there's more than 65 buildings in Whatcom County on that list. Now, this is, in 1981, you can see that the city then put this concrete, or rock wall here. And so sometimes people have thought that that was, part of the original building area, that there was a rock wall there, but it wasn't put there until 1981. That's when the old village trail was put in. And then the first thing we started doing was in 2009, we got a grant from the city of Bellingham and the Colonial Dames to put on the main roof. So we had the main roof put on, and this is what it looks like. And then we saw that the lean-to, what we call the military room now, the lean-to needed to have new shingles, and so that was from the Washington Trust. Now you can see then here at the back, over top of the back porch, that we had leakage here, and you can see how badly it was put together. So we had a new roof put on there, and this is the kitchen at the back and the new roof here. And that was, again, the Washington Trust helped us with that. Now, there was some activities. We used to see these bandits going in and out underneath the house here. So this wonderful Cub Scout father and his wife and some other Cub Scouts came, and they put a barrier here, but we were concerned that if the animal was in, it couldn't get out. So then we put some mothballs in, and when they left, then we boarded it up. But there were like about 4 mummies underneath there. So they were having a good time until the Cub Scouts joined us. Mike Vouri, some of you have seen him. He does a wonderful monologue of rendition of being Captain Pickett. It's 2 hours, and he agreed to come and do a fundraiser for us. And it was very successful. And this is Mike Cohn here, who does it with him, plays the banjo, plays Civil War songs. And so Mike offered to do that again for us, but he's now retired. He was a park ranger out at San Juan Island and retired. Now, you can see this is where we started thinking that we needed to get some improvements here. And this is the lean-to window, and so we noticed that it was rotting. So we decided that we'd better get another grant. And this is where we got the grant from the DAR, the National DAR. And I think that you can see here why we were getting a little apprehensive. So the windows were bad. Upstairs, the windows were also bad. If I put my fingers between the mullions, the glass moved back and forth. There was a yellow jacket nest in there, and we never used the upstairs because we had no rail on the stairs. So without a railing on the stairs, we felt it was not safe. So, so the DAR got us a grant, and we matched it, and National gave us $2,000, and Chief Whatcom chapter matched it with $1,000, and we matched it with $1,000. So we thought we were doing great. So we had Price and Visser make new windows and new storm sash, and use the old glass and put it back in because it still is for the integrity of the building. And when they did that, Paul Johnson went to put them back in, and he had to do lots of adjusting and cleaning up. And then he said, oh, and I think the shingles need to be replaced. And then when they put the roof on earlier, they took the barge board off, and a squirrel took advantage, and he was in the attic. So we said, okay, well, Paul, go ahead and get the windows made, and I painted them, and he put them back in and adjusted them, and by the time we'd finished with this, and you can see the windows here had to be adjusted, he moved them over to make them, and this is inside in the bedroom. So we had $4,000, and the windows cost $1,500 each, and that didn't cover the new stair rail that we wanted. But here's Paul working on it, and you can see, and I thought this was interesting for you to see, that this is the main boards underneath it all, because there were no shingles when Pickett was here. And here's Paul working at the front of the house. Here's the new window here, and you can see the new windows there. And you have to look closely at these shingles, because these shingles, my husband and I hand dipped them one at a time. But first of all, we had to dry them out. Then we hand dipped them one at a time for our house. And then when we got to this project, we said, we have some shingles. So each one of those shingles has my fingerprints on them. And so, so that summer I was so buff because first of all, they came soaked wet. They wouldn't take the preservative. So I told the contractor, I said, they're not going to accept it. So I had to dry them. Well, if you dry them flat like this, they don't dry. Lay them down, they don't dry. I took 2x4s and I put them all along the floors of all three floors. Put them along the edge. And by the time I got to the third floor, the bottom ones were dry. Bundled those back up for the fellows to put them on the building. So after they were all dry, then I dipped each one. And as I said, by the time I carried those up to the third floor and back down again and everything, I was really strong. You wouldn't have wanted to fight me. So, so Paul's doing that, and there you are. You see, I'm painting the windows in the sash, and this is on our front porch, and there is the new railing. So, and Darlene Carlson's son finished it beautifully like that. You can see the old one right here. Interesting enough, I decided about 2 weeks ago, maybe, I decided I would take some soda to it. Oh, hi, Darlene. I took some soda to it, and I got halfway up, and I looked, and it was black where I wasn't, and white. You saw it was white. So it's an interesting building. So we had a dedication, and then the DAR put on this dedication, and you can see the scouts raising the flag. There's Darlene right here, and you can see Sally Buckingham and Sharon Susdorf, and they did a wonderful job with the dedication. And then, let's see if I can do this right. There should be another group. And so there's friends of the Pickett House, and I think you'll recognize Candy and Noah. And there's Sally giving us the flag. Now that flag was donated to us from the DAR, and that flag was flown over the Capitol in Washington, D.C. So it's a numbered flag. And then people go in for the tours. And we hope to have another dedication coming up June 11th. So here's our mighty Wes and Deb, and there's the ranger. And so I asked them to take a picture in front of the Jeffcott sign. And then along came Joy. And Joy's here tonight because Joy decided that she would have the questers from Anacortes help us out and paint the fence. So here's our painting party, and there's some DAR people there, and Daughters of the Pioneers people, and questers. Now, questers is a group of people who seek antiques or preserve old things, and they are interested in also preserving houses. So Joy decided that she wanted to work on the Pickett House and help fix up the Pickett House. So the first thing the questers did was, you can see the window here, and there's damage here, and the window in the kitchen. And so the questers, Joy wrote for a grant to International Questers, and they gave us $5,000 for shingles. Oh, I'm sorry, I think I jumped ahead. They paid for this window. So the next thing that they decided to do was shingles on the side of the building. Oh, and then Joy also said that she would like to have the stove like this one right here is a picture of the stove that was originally there in the kitchen. It's a Monarch, and the serial number is exactly the same except for one number, right there, one number different. So I saw this on Craigslist, and I had been wanting to get one like Hattie's, and so I talked to the ladies about it, and they didn't think that we could afford it. So Joy said she would get it, and so what we did was we went down to Stanwood, and it was in a duck shack on the dike. The fellow Dale, when he met us down there, he had all camouflage outfit on, but you could see the crease in his pants. He was a retired pharmacist, very, very dapper, very, very nice. We got out of the cars, and there was water in the field, but you either walked 3 miles on the dike or you walked across the field. So we wore our boots because we knew the river was high. But we weren't halfway across before the river was too high and going over our boots. But once you're wet, there you go, it doesn't matter. So we sloshed over, and if you know about the dike has a bit of water on one side, just as a little trench, and then the river on the other side. So we had to go off a little footbridge to go across to get onto the dike itself. Well, there's 3 of these duck shacks in a row, and the third one was where Dale was going to show us the stove. So we're having a good time, and we're laughing, the 3 of us, 3 questers go on a quest. And so we got just past the second duck shack, and out popped these 3 men. Now, these 3 men were wonderful, but they were upriver men. Yes? Oh, I'm sorry. So they were upriver men, and they had been living there, and I don't think that they're supposed to, but they'd been living there. And like, the big, long, gray beard, and they looked at us, and we looked at them, and he said, "Hey, Dale, where'd you find the women?" So we thought that was great, and before we left there, Joy had made arrangements to come back in the summer for a potluck lunch. So we're now part of their gang. So they came, 4 guys came, and they brought that stove in pieces. It's very heavy, and they installed it for us. And then Joy and Dee and I painted the whole kitchen, and then we had shelves put in. And you can see the shelves with the antiques there. And then the wall we painted, and the kitchen cabinets we painted. So we're real happy that this looks so much like the one. So then this is what the questers paid for. Their grant paid for the shingles here. You can see them finished here. You can see what it looked like first. And then right now, Price and Visser is making another window here, and that window is costing us $1,700. So it's not inexpensive to replace. This is in the upstairs bedroom at the back of the house. The back of the house windows, as you can see, they need to be either replaced or painted. We decided to paint them, and we decided to take off this wall covering. And what we decided to do is we decided to strip everything off the walls and see what was there. And so this is what the window looked like here, and you can see it needed some tender loving care. So we decided to name the room the Hattie Strother Sewing Room. Hattie Strother was a seamstress and lived in the house 47 years. So she lived there from 1889 to 1936. And I have to say my daughter found this map for me. This is a cutting board. So, and then my husband did the writing, the calligraphy. So Hattie was a seamstress, and she lived there from 1889 to 1936, and so we wanted to honor her. And so we then put, this is what we found in the room. And I brought this for you to see. We took up the shag carpet, and there was a felt pad underneath it. We took up that felt pad, and there was a grass mat underneath that. We took up the grass mats, and there were 1918 newspapers. On the one end of the room, there was a carpet nailed down, an old worn-out carpet nailed down. So I pulled those nails and pulled that up, and this is what we found was an 1894 Bellingham Bay Express newspaper. So I put it in a frame here for you to see, and we have it hanging in the Hattie Strother Sewing Room. And I also, just a couple of days ago, I took one of the 1916 newspapers and put it in the other frame, and I'm going to put that at the Pickett House, and that's all cartoons. It's a Sunday cartoon special. So I think you'll enjoy seeing those. So that room, you can see that the walls look like they were whitewashed, and you can see the strips between the planks right there. I brought a piece of the material that is from the one room, and they tore up strips of whatever material they had. And we thought it was just to keep the air out, or maybe the bugs out, or something like that. But we also thought maybe it made it a solid base for the wallpaper, so that your wallpaper, this gap between the wood wouldn't show. This is a dressmaker's form, and one of the questors in Indiana read about the international grant, and so that we got, and so she read about the Pickett House. So she drove out from Indiana last September and brought this. This is a dress form when she was teaching high school in Indiana, and this is a dress form that she had because she was a home ec teacher, and she said it's from the 1920s. And then what we did was, you can see here that we kept the ceiling open. We didn't put any paint or wallpaper on it. We put a mannequin here, and we have an ironing board with quilts. And then over here is the 1890 Eldridge two-spool sewing machine. And I didn't know what a two-spool was, but the two-spool is if you go to the computer, you can learn more than you want to know. And you have the spool here, like we do still today. But instead of a bobbin, you have another spool down here. And so quilters would like that because you wouldn't have to keep changing the bobbin thread. And so here's the base of it, it's Eldridge. I called my sister and asked her if she minded this was my mother's. And so we feel like it has a good home now. This is the other bedroom, and at this time we've decided to keep it the way it is. These are the two windows in the front of the building. And this dressing table and this bed here is from the Slater family. And the Slater family, the story is on this bed is that, and the dressing table, is that it came from England in the 1850s, but the captain did not he lost his mind. And so the crew took over, and a mutinied crew was not allowed to dock, apparently. So they went south, and they didn't find a place to dock, and one of the Slater baby was born in Valparaiso, and then they came to Whatcom County. And Ruth, one of our members, Ruth has a bed like this at her house, and this is the bed and dressing, whoops, I'm sorry. The bed and dressing table is from Jean, her sister, who was a member. So, and then this a waterfall design bedroom set was there. And so we've kept that bedroom the same. Then we decided to redo the bathroom. Now the bathroom is where they used to cook. But you can see the wall strips right there like that. Now this is the window in the bathroom, but this was an old window behind the the bathroom sink. We didn't know it was there. So this used to be a window. So everything was pretty rotten as far as the floor, from water damage, from leaking around the sink. So Paul took the whole bathroom apart. And we have a book here that he put together that shows the progress of it and shows what was done and what it looks like now. So let's see if I can do this. This is, the electrician told me that this was too dangerous, it shouldn't be there. This is the old sink. Then you can see this cord going along here. That was just an extension cord. And that extension cord, the electrician told me, was really dangerous. So that's why we decided to take the bathroom apart and fix that. So this is what Paul put in. He has, this is an 1850s dry sink with copper lining. This is an antique mirror. And this wallpaper is a copy of an 1850s pattern that he found at a wallpaper distributor on Vancouver Island. And then, of course, the galvanized tub. So the bathroom is absolutely wonderful. If anybody wants to find something lovely to sit in, it would be the bathroom here. And so I wanted to mention this book right here is a book that the Daughters of the Pioneers published, and it's stories of their families from the Daughters of the Pioneers in Washington State. And what was interesting and why we put it here is because there's a picture of a mother giving a child a bath in a tub just like this. So that book, Soap Suds to Sunday School, would be like, the first you wash clothes, then you iron, and then on Sunday you go to church. Soap Suds to Sunday School. We have that for sale here tonight. Okay, so this is now the lean-to, what we call the military room. And you can see that he's taken off at least 6 layers of wallpaper, and he's taken up the old flooring so that, come on. So you can see here, see that says rolled oats, that's what it said. Okay, and then this, I've just left this in to show you that this is the front door. This is the doorbell, and I thought it was really interesting, and nobody had ever rung the doorbell, and I was afraid to ring it because I thought it might break. And then the carpenter came in and said, "Did you hear this?" And he rang it, and so now I ring it. But we're going to leave that the way it is. And there's Paul in his bathroom that he's so proud of, and we're proud of it too. And then this is a picture of the people who made all of this possible. Gary and Joy Walter. And Joy is the quester who is the encourager and never rest person, and she's here tonight, and I'd like you to give her a round of applause. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So the special supporters of the Pickett House. So that's the end of the program, and I thought there was one last picture, but I don't see it, so. There it is. There it was. There it was. If you were quick, you saw it. Okay, so the questions.
You have sort of a guiding plan as to what you want a new room, the refurbished room to look like, and what time period, and how do you decide what look to go with, and one part of the house or the other, depending on what you're trying to say about the house.
Well,
to try to keep, you have
yeah.
to make it safe and,
Hattie was for 47 years there, so really she was the main person. Her father was a tailor, and her sister and her were seamstresses. And I don't know how you can, what you can do and what balance. What we started out to do was keep it dry and maintain the integrity, such as when we had the windows made, have the glass taken out and put in the new windows. And of course, and putting shingles and shakes on rather than modern materials. So I don't know, nobody's come forward and said, no, we shouldn't do this, so we just kind of bowled through.
In Harris's journal, there's the following statement. We were then living in an old-time place known as the McPherson House, said to have been built and occupied by General Pickett. Is that this place?
Yes, but what happened is, I think, when something gets printed, it gets printed and printed and printed as facts. And so I have just done a lot of research and found out that lots of things aren't true. And I'm giving tours and telling people stuff, and then I find out, oh, that wasn't right, And so you don't know who to believe or whatever. But McPherson lived there. Yes, he did. There were about 8 people that lived there between 1858, when John Parker bought the house from John Peabody.
Was Harris one of them?
Yes, yes. Harris, Estella Harris, and then Lawrence and Mrs. Pitchford rented the house, and then Fouts, the first teacher at Marietta, he lived there 1873 with his family until 1882, and that's when General McPherson bought the house.
Okay, and then Harris would be after that.
Harris, yes, 1884 was Harris.
Okay, do you have any idea if he owned it or if he rented it?
As far as I know, he owned it.
Okay.
But I would have to research that.
Okay, thank you.
But then that's when, in 1889, when Robert Franklin Strother bought it and then sent for his 2 daughters. And so from 1889 till when the daughters of the pioneers got the house.
Because he was living there then when he discovered Lake Samish.
If he did discover Lake Samish and if he was living there, I would say yes.
1885. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, 1884 is when he moved into the house. Sure, and go ahead.
Right, another question. I was just curious about clarification about that stove that looked rather fascinating, that Monarch, but I was trying to correlate with, you had said that she cooked outside, and so I was curious if the Monarch was outside, was it outside in a separate building? Was the Monarch actually in what is presently that bathroom?
As far as I know, the kitchen was put on about 1904, so there had been no stove there until before that.
Okay,
so she cooked outside at least until 1904.
And then, so she cooked outside on a what kind of stove?
Oh, I don't really know, but I do know it was probably like a fireplace.
Okay.
And that's what
I see.
Captain Pickett's wife cooked outside. The building itself is 2 rooms on the bottom and 2 rooms on the top. Then the lean-to was added before 1873, and then the kitchen was added small kitchen about 1904. And I don't know when the Monarch was put in that kitchen. So, but sometimes from pictures you can tell, sometimes from letters you can tell. So the interesting thing that I would like to mention about the house is that some people, I think some of you read about the Pickett Bridge, and we shouldn't call it a Pickett Bridge because Pickett family had slaves, and there was, some concern there. When Pickett lived there, he was a captain for the Union Army, and then he later became a brigadier general for the Confederacy. While he was living there, he married a northern woman. Sometimes we think she was Haida, but a lot of times the Indians on Vancouver Island, if they were from the north, they were just called Northern Indians. But he married her and had a child there. So she lived in that house. And then when the Strother family came, Aunt Mary came with them. And Aunt Mary, took me a long time to find out who Aunt Mary was, but Aunt Mary was the widow of Thomas Smith. So her name was Mary Smith, and that was hard for me to finally locate information about her. Then I found out she was named Mary Lewis Smith, and I found her parents, and that she was on the rolls in 1930, living at the Pickett House at 910 Bancroft Street, and she was listed on the rolls as MU. So she was a mulatto. So she was a freeborn black. And so I like to think that all those different cultures were in this house.
Edradine, thanks for that wonderful talk. I have a question. There's a huge old oak tree behind the house.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you knew anything about that oak tree, when it might have been planted.
We have pictures of it being there from the beginning somewhere, the first pictures. And right now we're having it trimmed and thinned out. Yeah, it's very big. It's certainly over 100 years old. And I asked about having it drilled to find out about how old it was, and they said that it would be not a good idea to be invasive with it so that it wouldn't get it. So we're still looking at that and seeing how old it might be. But some of the pictures show it in there. So I don't have a direct age.
Pickett's wife's name was?
We don't know. He was married 3 times. He married Sally Midge when he was stationed in Texas, and she died during childbirth, and the child died. Then he married Mrs. Pickett when he lived here, and that's all we know about her name. Archie Binns, in his book in the 1930s, he wrote about her, and where he came up with Morning Mist, we don't know. It's
Yeah.
lovely, but we don't.
I love the name Morning Mist.
But we don't have any verification that she was called anything other than Mrs. Pickett.
And I understand he met her at Semiahmoo?
That's what we understand. Yeah, but a lot of Indians met there and socialized there and traded there.
And I guess a lot of people tell stories about the Pickett House.
I'm
They
sure
may not
they-
always be true.
The stories?
Yes.
I think
Or
some
about
of them
Pickett.
might be.
What?
We don't know what's true anymore, do we? Sometimes, for instance, I tell something during the tours and then I read something later and think, well, where did I get that, So, sometimes you just have to say, well, let's verify it. So
don't know,
as far as Mrs. Pickett, she died within 4 months of giving birth to their son.
Yeah.
And we don't know what she died from. We used to think it was childbirth because his first wife died during childbirth, and so many ladies did. But we think she might have died from the influenza epidemic that went through that winter with the communal housing and all.
The history should mean something to people today. And I love telling kids about the Pig War and about Pickett and about Robert and Robert's Rules of Order. So it would be nice that somebody could tell me if I'm telling people the right thing or not.
Oh, they'll
But-
tell you if they think they know it.
Yeah, oh, that's. I'll remember that. Thank you.
Yeah. But, they have to verify it. It's just like when I looked up Robert Strother, and I'm trying to figure out who he was. He came from Tennessee, and R.F. Strother, Robert Franklin Strother. So I started putting a timeline for him, and then I would say that Robert Strother was in the Battle of the Wilderness, and he was wounded, and then the genealogy ladies, Dean Cohn put this tintype picture in the Herald, and then the genealogy ladies said they'd help me out and try to find out who this was in this tintype. And so they said, well, maybe it's Robert Strother, maybe it was from him. So they were doing something with R.F. Strother, and somebody across the internet said, no, that is not Robert Franklin Strother in the Battle of the Wilderness. That's Robert Fenton Strother. So they'll tell you. So maybe it was Robert Fenton Strother, maybe it wasn't. But that was a dead end for me because I don't have any other information on Robert Franklin Strother being in the Civil War.
I do have a comment about the stove.
Yes.
The idea that there was two sequential numbers doesn't surprise me because the only person who sold them in the area was Morse Hardware.
Yeah, I think Was going to look on the internet and see when those numbers were issued at the Monarch company. They would have that. I just haven't done it.